Before we begin, just a quick note. This video doesn't use horror footage or jump scares. Instead, I've kept it simple. Just real chilling stories and soft rain sounds in the background. Because sometimes, all it takes is a voice and your own imagination to feel fear. So if you're lying in bed, trying to sleep, just close your eyes, listen, and let the stories unfold. It started like any other weekend trip. 3 friends, Eric, Mark and Jason, had been meaning to get away for months. Life had gotten busy. Eric moved out of state for work. Mark had a kid on the way. Jason had just gone through a nasty breakup. So when they finally aligned schedules and planned a camping trip deep in Daniel Boone National Forest, it felt like the escape they all needed. Nothing complicated. Just 2 nights out in nature, away from city lights, buzzing phones, and bad thoughts. Eric had found a thread online. Some obscure forum about forgotten trails in Kentucky. Most of it was ghost stories and Bigfoot nonsense. But one comment caught his eye. Rockhouse Creek. Take the unmarked trail past mile marker 6. If the forest goes quiet, turn back. I mean it. The others laughed when he showed them. Perfect, Jason had said. If we vanish, at least Reddit will know where to look. By Friday afternoon, they were piled into Mark's dusty Tacoma, barreling down winding roads into the green heart of the forest. The sun dipped low, turning the trees gold. They passed the last gas station an hour back. No cell signal, just woods, real woods. After an hour of bad directions and worse map reading, they finally found the unmarked trail. A narrow break in the tree line barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. Jason grinned. We're definitely trespassing. Eric rolled his eyes. It's public land, just forgotten. They hiked in for about 40 minutes. The deeper they went, the denser the forest became. Sound changed. The wind didn't move the leaves. Even the insects seemed quieter. Then, the clearing. A perfect circle of grass surrounded by ancient trees. No trash, no beer cans, not even a fire ring. Like no one had ever camped there before. This is it, Eric said, spreading his arms like a tour guide. Our own little pocket of nothing. They set up camp. Tent, cooler, fire pit. Jason gathered wood while Mark cracked beers, and Eric double-checked the map he printed off Reddit. As twilight fell, the forest pressed in closer. The temperature dipped. Little chilly, Mark muttered, pulling his hoodie tighter. Jason returned with an armload of sticks and dumped them into the fire pit. You feel that? He said suddenly. Eric looked up. What? Jason paused. Just the trees. They feel too still. They all listened. It was quiet. Too quiet. Not a bird. Not a bug. Just the faint creak of trees shifting in the wind. But the air wasn't moving. Eric broke the silence. It's just because we're far in. No traffic. No people. Jason nodded, but his expression didn't change. They made fire. Ate hot dogs. Laughed. For a while, it was almost normal. But the forest didn't feel warm. It didn't embrace them. It just watched. By midnight, the fire was dying down, and Jason wandered off to relieve himself behind a tree. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Jason, Eric called out. No answer. Mark frowned. Should we check on him? Before Eric could answer, Jason reappeared from the shadows. I'm good, he said flatly. Eric blinked. You okay? Jason nodded slowly, walking past them toward the tent. Didn't bring a light? Mark asked. Jason didn't answer. He crawled into the tent and zipped it shut. Eric looked at Mark. That was weird. That night, neither of them slept well. Jason lay perfectly still, eyes wide open, staring straight at the top of the tent. His breathing was shallow, almost like he was holding it. Eric pretended not to notice. Mark turned his back. At some point in the night, Eric woke up to something scratching at the tent wall. Not an animal. It sounded like fingers, long, deliberate. He sat up. Jason's eyes were still open, still staring. Eric didn't sleep again. The sun rose, but it didn't feel like morning. Mist clung to the forest floor, like it didn't want to lift. Dew hung on the tent like sweat. Eric stepped out, rubbing his eyes, bones aching. Mark was already poking at the fire pit with a stick, trying to rekindle something from the blackened wood. Jason sat on a log nearby, motionless, still. He hadn't moved since Eric last saw him in the night. Same posture, same wide stare, same flat affect. "Morning," Eric said cautiously. Jason turned his head, slowly, and smiled. But it wasn't a normal smile. It was too wide, held too long, as if he didn't quite know how to make the expression fit. "Sleep good?" Mark asked, forcing cheer. Jason blinked. Didn't sleep. His voice was different this time. Still deep but dull. Off rhythm. Like someone trying to remember how to talk. Eric squatted near the fire. "You sure you're okay, man?" Jason didn't respond. Just looked at them. Blinked. Then turned back toward the woods like he was listening for something. That's when Eric noticed it. Jason had mud on his feet. Not like someone who walked around a damp forest barefoot, but streaks, smudges, thin, dark lines, as if he'd been crawling. Eric stared. Jason met his gaze and grinned again. They tried to go about their day like normal. Ate half-burned eggs, filtered some creek water, hiked a short trail nearby to look for deer tracks. But Jason didn't join them. He stayed back at camp. "He's freaking me out," Mark muttered as they walked. Eric nodded. I think something happened last night." "You mean, like mentally?" "No," Eric said. "I mean something, not someone. Something out here." Mark scoffed, but didn't argue. They returned by late afternoon. Jason was nowhere to be seen. His boots were at the tent entrance. His sleeping bag was unzipped. The fire had been relit, even though neither of them had done it. "Jason," Eric called out. Silence. Mark looked around. "You hear that?" Eric strained his ears. Birds. The sound was back, chirping, leaves rustling, wind moving branches. "That's new," Mark said quietly. "We didn't hear anything yesterday." Eric nodded. They stood in the clearing, suddenly aware of just how quiet things had been. Almost like the forest had been holding its breath. But now, it was exhaling. Jason walked out of the trees 5 minutes later, but something wasn't right. He looked too calm, like he'd been walking aimlessly with no urgency, and in his hand was a squirrel, dead, not skinned, not gutted, just held, limpio. Jason dropped it on the fire, sat down, and began whittling a stick. "You hungry?" he asked, voice more human now, but still just a little off. Mark exchanged a look with Eric. "You kill that thing?" Mark asked, trying to sound casual. Jason nodded once, smile fading. "Had to. It was watching." Eric's skin prickled. "What do you mean?" Jason looked up, dead serious. Everything in these woods watches, but only one thing remembers. He stabbed the stick into the fire, letting it blacken. "You said it last night," he muttered. "Said what?" Eric asked. Jason looked right at him. "His name." Eric frowned. "Goatman." Jason flinched, visibly. His face twitched, eyes narrowing. Mark cursed. "Dude, what the hell?" "You called him," Jason hissed. Eric took a step back. "Okay, man, you're really starting to freak me out." Jason stood. and for just a second, the air changed. No wind, no sound. His voice deepened slightly as he said, "He comes in forms you'll recognize, but they won't last." Then he sat back down like nothing happened. That night, Eric stayed awake with the axe beside his sleeping bag. Mark pretended to sleep. Jason was outside the tent again, humming softly. Around 2 a.m., the humming stopped. Then the voice came, but it didn't come from Jason. It came from the woods. "Eric," it was a whisper. Eric sat up. "Eric, come here." It was Jason's voice, but Jason was right outside the tent, visible through the mesh flap, still facing the dying fire. Eric's breath hitched. Mark opened one eye, heard it too. "Eric, please," Eric whispered. "That's not him." The voice got closer. Then, "Mark, it hurts." Now it was Mark's name. Now it sounded like Eric's voice. They both froze. Then the footsteps came, light, software barefoot, circling the tent. Then a new voice. "I see you." A whisper, but no longer familiar. Low, hollow, like it echoed inside their skulls. Then scratching. On the nylon of the tent wall. Mark grabbed the axe. Eric held the flashlight tight. The zipper moved. They shouted. Eric shined the light. Mark raised the axe. But no one was there. The woods were empty. Jason was gone. Only the squirrel bones in the fire remained. The fire had long died, and Jason hadn't returned. Eric and Mark sat with their backs to the tent, eyes fixed on the woods that now seemed to pulse with a life of their own. Every snap of a twig, every gust of wind against the treetops sounded too deliberate, like something wanted them to know it was still there. "I'm going after him," Mark whispered. Eric grabbed his arm. "Are you crazy? He could be hurt. Or worse," Eric said. "That thing, whatever's out there, it was pretending to be him. You heard it." Mark pulled away, standing slowly. "We can't just leave him." Eric didn't argue. He stood too. The trees swallowed them quickly. They followed the crushed leaves and snapped branches left in Jason's wake. But after 20 minutes, the trail grew cold. Then came the smell. Rot, not the scent of animal decay. This was wetter, more acidic, almost metallic. "Do you smell that?" Mark asked. Eric nodded slowly. "It's close." They stepped into a smaller clearing, no more than 10 feet wide. At the center was a pile of something. Animal bones, scattered and gnawed. Tufts of fur, a jacket. Jason's. Eric stepped forward, lifting the torn sleeve. No blood, just shredded cloth. And dirt. "What if this isn't just some thing that got into him?" Mark asked. Eric looked up. "What do you mean?" Mark stared into the trees. What if Jason never came back from the woods that first night? Eric's mouth went dry. A crunch echoed to their left. Both men turned. Nothing there. Then, more crunching, this time to the right. Mark gripped the axe tighter. Eric raised his flashlight, its dim beam cutting across tree trunks, brush, and then a figure, about 20 feet away, standing unnaturally still. It was Jason, naked, eyes wide, smile stretched to his ears, but his arms too long, fingers crooked at impossible angles. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. Mark stepped forward. "Jason." Jason tilted his head sharply, like a puppet. Eric whispered, "Don't. Move." Jason stepped forward. One leg twitched as it hit the ground, a jerking, misfiring movement, like someone wearing a body they didn't fully understand. Then he spoke. "Mark, it's okay now." The voice was close. Too close. It sounded like it came from inside their ears. Jason took another step, then another. Then he broke into a sprint, but not toward them. He darted into the woods, head lolling side to side as he ran, a twitchy, inhuman gallop. Mark shouted, "What the hell is happening?" Eric didn't answer. He was frozen. Where Jason had been standing just seconds before was now a trail of hoofprints. Not human, not deer, something in between. They ran, didn't think, just ran. Low branches tore at their faces. Vines caught their ankles. The forest pushed back, but they didn't stop. Finally, they found themselves back at camp. But something was wrong. The tent, gone. The logs are gone. The fire pit, gone. The entire clearing was empty, as if they had never been there at all. Mark stumbled forward. No, no, no. Eric spun in a circle. We were just here. Where's the gear? Where's the goddamn camp? But the forest only stared back. And then, from behind a tree, Jason stepped out. Fully dressed, breathing normal, calm. He smiled. "You guys all right?" he asked. Mark raised the axe. Eric pulled out his pocket knife. "Where have you been?" Eric asked. Jason blinked. "I just went to take a leak. What's going on?" Eric looked at Mark, whispered, "Is that him?" Mark didn't respond. Jason stepped forward. "I think you both need to calm down," he said. "You're scaring me." Eric took a step back. "Say something only Jason would know." Jason frowned. "What?" "Say something, prove it." Jason paused, then smiled. "You remember that time I saved your ass at Mason Lake?" Eric's stomach turned. "You were too drunk to swim back and I pulled you out." Mark's grip on the axe loosened. "You puked on me and said you saw something in the water." Eric looked at Mark. "That did happen." Jason's smile widened, too wide. "But you never told me what you saw, did you?" Eric stepped back. Jason's voice shifted, ever so slightly, deeper, like something beneath the voice was leaking through. "Go ahead, Eric. Tell them." Mark raised the axe again. "You're not him." Jason's skin twitched, like it was trying to peel itself off. His left eye drooped. One of his fingers bent backwards, still smiling. "Almost had you." The thing lunged. Mark swung the axe and caught it square in the shoulder. It shrieked, not like a man, but like metal scraping against bone. The illusion shattered. Jason's face split, revealing blackened muscle and yellowed teeth too large for a human jaw. It clawed at them, missing by inches, and then vanished into the trees with unnatural speed. Eric fell to his knees, heaving. Mark backed up against a tree, pale. "I don't think Jason ever came back," he whispered. Eric looked up. "I don't think he ever left," he said. The sun refused to rise. Morning didn't come. Eric and Mark sat in the middle of what used to be their campsite. Now just dead leaves and untouched soil. No tent, no cooler, no footprints. Not even the burnt circle from their fire pit remained. It was as if the forest had erased them. "Where the hell are we?" Mark muttered, still clutching the axe. His voice trembled, raw from breathing hard, from screaming. Eric stood slowly, knees popping. This was the clearing. We camped right here. But now, nothing. Not even their own footprints led into the space. The ground around them was smooth, untouched, like they had floated in. Eric's voice was flat. "We're not in the same woods anymore." Mark blinked. "What?" Eric pointed at the trees. "Look at the trunks. There's no bark, just smooth black wood. And the air smells like metal," Mark finished. "Like pennies." That's when they heard it again. Jason's voice. "Hey, where'd you go?" It came from behind them. Clear, calm, familiar. They turned. Jason stood about 10 feet away, partially hidden behind a tree, just his face visible. Why'd you leave me, guys? Eric took a step forward. Mark grabbed his arm. No. But what if... It's not him. Jason stepped out from behind the tree. His body was bent, shoulders sagging unnaturally, eyes too round. Lips curled into that now familiar grin. You don't trust me anymore? It asked. Mark whispered. That's not even his voice anymore. It was deeper, hollow, as if it was speaking from under Jason's skin. Jason moved, twitchy, stuttering steps, toward them. The arms dragged, the feet didn't bend, and then it spoke again, but this time in Mark's voice. Don't leave me behind, Eric. Eric stumbled backward. Stop talking like that. The thing shivered, and Jason's body split at the collarbone, just a little. Black, wet skin peeled up from his sternum like an old coat. Inside, something moved. You know what this is, don't you? It whispered. You've heard the name. Mark stepped forward, trembling. What are you? The thing stopped, tilted its head, and smiled wider. Goatman, it whispered. Wendigo. Skinwalker. Pick a name. We don't care. We wear what we kill. Then it lunged, but not toward them. It vanished, like smoke sucked backward into the trees. Mark and Eric spun wildly, trying to find where it went. The forest around them seemed to breathe. Trees shifted. Shadows bled across the ground. We need to move, Eric said. Now. They stumbled downhill, trying to follow the sunless light filtering through the grey canopy. Every few yards, they found something off. A tree, sliced clean across at the base but still standing. A crow, crucified with twigs, its beak sewn shut with grass. And then, a backpack, Jason's, still zipped. Eric knelt and opened it slowly. Inside his knife, the canteen, a half-eaten protein bar, and a note. Folded, damp, torn at the edges. He opened it carefully, written in Jason's handwriting. If you find this, it's already wearing me. Eric's breath hitched. Don't follow it. Don't speak to it. Don't believe anything it says. It's not Jason. It never was. Mark sank to his knees, holding his head. What is this thing? He whispered. Why us? Eric looked at the trees, the way they curled inward toward the trail, like a throat ready to swallow. I think we were just next. That night, they didn't try to make camp. They just walked. Every now and then, they heard Jason's voice again, behind them, ahead of them, sometimes whispering, sometimes laughing. Once, it screamed Eric's name in a pitch so high, it sounded like glass cracking. Once, it mimicked Eric's mother's voice, asking if he was cold. At some point, Mark stopped. He turned to Eric, eyes wide. Do you remember what road we drove in on? Eric blinked. What? What road? The gravel, the turnoff, the marker. Do you remember any of it? Eric opened his mouth. Stopped. He didn't. He remembered Jason handing him the map. He remembered the trail, but not how they got there. Mark whispered, I don't think we ever came in on a road. Then behind them, a low groan rose into the trees, a sound like wood cracking and bones breaking at the same time. Then silence. Eric whispered, It's stalking us. Mark looked up. No. He turned slowly, pointing at the canopy. It's above us. They ran. Branches slapped their faces. Roots grabbed at their ankles. Something laughed in the trees above. A wet, clicking sound. Then Eric stumbled, fell, cracked his elbow on a rock. Mark skidded to a stop, turned, helped him up. And that's when they saw it, perched on a limb above them. Not Jason anymore. A massive, long-limbed creature, its skin torn and hanging, its face stretching with seams like someone had stitched it from several animals. Eyes glowing faintly yellow, Its antlers scraped the bark above, and its voice, low, crawling through the forest, said, "You should have run faster." They didn't scream. They couldn't. They just ran. Behind them, they heard it drop from the tree and begin to crawl, on all fours. The sound of its limbs pulling across the ground was like wet leather and broken sticks. They saw a light. In the distance, a cabin. Mark didn't stop to question it. They burst through the door, slamming it behind them. Dust filled the air. Spiderwebs clung to their faces. But they were inside. Wood walls, no windows, a bolt on the door. They locked it. And then the pounding began, slow, deliberate, as if whatever was outside knew they had nowhere else to go. "Knock, knock," the thing whispered through the wall. "Let me back in. You owe me that much." Eric and Mark stood frozen in the dark. The door was locked. The walls seemed solid. But the pounding outside, slow, patient, confident, didn't stop. It wasn't like something trying to break in. It was like something reminding them, it can wait. Mark slid down the wall to the floor, breathing heavily. "This place," he whispered, "I don't think it's real." Eric didn't answer. He was watching the walls, listening to them. They weren't creaking like old wood should. They were shifting, almost imperceptibly, expanding, contracting, like lungs. The house was breathing. Something scratched along the outside, circling them slowly. But Eric was focused on something else now. A faint sound under the floorboards. It wasn't footsteps. It was whispering. "He's hiding something from you." Eric spun to Mark. "You hear that?" Mark looked up slowly, eyes glassy. "The voices." Eric blinked. "Yeah." Mark nodded. "They started whispering to me right after we ran, telling me to leave you behind." Eric stared at him. "And you didn't think to mention that?" Mark stood. His hand hovered near the axe again. "Because I didn't. I stayed, Eric, didn't I? I didn't leave you. Even when the thing wore Jason's face. He chose the wrong one. That voice, this time from the ceiling." Eric and Mark looked up simultaneously. Above them, scrawled in long, blood-red letters, were words they hadn't noticed before. "You let it in." Suddenly, all four walls shuddered. Not from impact, from inside. The sound of nails tearing into wood echoed around them. The back wall cracked vertically, splinters blooming like flowers. Eric whispered, "Mark, back away from that wall." Mark had already stepped forward. "There's something behind it." "No, listen to me." Mark put a hand on the wall, and it exhaled. A long, low sigh, wet, rotten. The boards warmed under his touch. Mark staggered back, staring at his palm. It was covered in something black, sticky, breathing. Thud. Something slammed against the outside, again and again. The door cracked at the hinges. Eric grabbed the nearest broken chair leg and raised it like a weapon. Mark grabbed the axe again. Then silence. And then a voice. Eric's voice. "Mark, it's me." Mark's grip on the axe tightened. "Please open the door. I'm outside." Mark looked at Eric. Eric whispered, "Don't." But Mark was trembling. That's your voice." "Exactly. How?" Eric shook his head. "Because it's not me. It's what it does. It wears us." The voice spoke again, this time with a sob. "I'm scared, man." It took Mark. "Please let me in." Now it was his voice. They both stood there, breathing hard. "You're the last one left, Eric." Now the voice wasn't either of them. It was someone else entirely. Female. Old. "You'll die in here. Might as well open the door." The walls began bleeding. Thin rivulets of black ichor ran from the seams between boards. The writing on the ceiling began to melt. "You let it in. became you are it. Mark backed into the corner. Eric fell to his knees, covering his ears. The voice whispered, "You were never going to escape. No one does. It was Jason first, then you, then Mark, one by one." Eric shouted, "Shut up." Then everything stopped. The bleeding, the whispering, the pounding, silence. And then, from the center of the room, a sound. Not from the door, not from outside, from beneath them, something inside the floorboards. They both turned slowly. A bulge rose from the wooden floor. Then a crack. A long, split-open mouth appeared across the grain of the floor, as if the house smiled. Then the boards opened up. A hand reached through, grey, thin, finger bones pressing against skin too tight to hold them. Then another, and then Jason's face, or what was left of it, slowly rising from the floor. But his eyes were wrong. They weren't Jason's anymore. They were wide and blank and hungry. He looked directly at Eric. "You said its name." Eric didn't wait. He swung the chair leg and smashed it across the thing's face. It didn't bleed. It didn't flinch. It just laughed, low and guttural. Mark yelled and swung the axe, cutting deep into the thing's shoulder. That worked. It screamed. The entire house shook. Then more hands began clawing out from the floor. Arms, faces, stretched and rotting, peeling apart mid-form. Not just Jason. Others, dozens, hundreds, all half-formed, half-human. Mark screamed, "The whole house is a mouth. It's a trap." Eric turned and kicked through the weakest part of the wall. Splinters exploded outward. "Go!" They dove through, back into the woods. But now, the woods had changed. Trees bent toward them as they passed. Faces blinked inside knots in the bark. A deer stood with its legs twisted backwards. Its eyes followed them. The moon, if it was the moon, was moving, chasing them. Eric tripped again and landed on something soft. A coat, Jason's. He screamed and rolled away. The coat got up. Eric's scream echoed into the trees as the coat lifted off the ground, empty sleeves stretching unnaturally, as if filled with invisible arms. The shape beneath it formed slowly, like fog solidifying into muscle and bone. A face emerged, Jason's face, but it was not Jason. Its grin was too wide, the eyes too glassy, the head tilting at an inhuman angle. It didn't blink. It didn't even breathe. It just watched. Eric scrambled backward. Mark yanked him to his feet, adrenaline numbing the pain. "Don't look at it," he hissed. "Just run." They sprinted again, deeper into the trees. Branches lashed their arms. Roots rose like claws to trip them. The air had turned thick, heavy with rot, and something chemical, like old meat left in the sun. The whispers were back. "He's tired. Leave him behind." He said the name. "You should have been first." After what felt like an eternity, they broke through the tree line into a clearing and stopped dead in their tracks. A road, a real paved road, painted lines, a faded wooden signpost. Route 56 north, exit 4 miles. Eric almost dropped to his knees. "Jesus, we made it." Mark stared, wide-eyed, struggling to believe it. This can't be real. This can't be real. But the asphalt was warm beneath their feet. They could smell tar. Distant wind brushed over the grass at the roadside. It felt real. And then, headlights. A rumbling engine. A pickup truck. Old, rusted, but moving down the road toward them. Eric ran into the road, flailing his arms. "Hey, please stop." The truck slowed. Headlights lit up their dirt-covered faces. It rolled to a stop. The window rolled down. The driver was a man in his 60s, thin, wearing a patched hunting jacket and thick glasses. A rifle sat behind the seat. He looked them over calmly. You two lost? Eric nearly cried. Yes, yes. We've been out here. We've seen something's in the woods. Please, we need help. The man nodded slowly, then said flatly, Which one of you said the name? Mark froze. Eric's stomach dropped. What? The man stared through the windshield. You said it, didn't you? Eric stepped back. How do you know about... The man sighed. You boys don't get it. You don't say its name. Not out loud, not even in your head. Mark stammered. But you know what it is? I know enough, the man said, voice tightening. I've lived by these woods 40 years, seen kids wander in and not come out. You can't stop it. You can't kill it. All you can do is not invite it in. He pointed to Eric. You invited it. Mark turned to Eric. You, when? When did you say it? Eric shook his head. I didn't know. There was a book. Just a name in a book. I didn't mean to. The man looked down at his dashboard. Then it's too late. Bang! The back of the truck exploded in glass and metal. Something huge had landed on it. A dark, spindly blur with antlers and claws like hooked blades. The windshield shattered. The old man barely got his hand to the rifle before the door was ripped off the hinges and he was gone, dragged into the dark with an awful tearing sound. Mark screamed, Go! They jumped into the truck, no keys, but it was still running. Eric slammed the gear into drive. The tires shrieked as the truck swerved down the road, sparks flying from the twisted metal on the back. Behind them, the thing followed, running on all fours, faster than the truck. Its limbs weren't shaped like a man's. They were too long, bent backwards. Its face flickered in the mirror. Not one face, but many. Jason's, the old man's, their own. It was them. It was everything they feared. The road twisted. Eric struggled to stay on it. Trees blurred past. Mark was in the passenger seat, clutching the rifle the old man had dropped. Shoot it, Eric yelled. Mark turned, aimed, fired. Boom! The windshield cracked. The creature flinched but didn't fall. It shrieked, an awful, layered cry, like children screaming beneath a woman's wail and the howl of something ancient. Mark loaded again, fired, nothing. The truck skidded around a bend. And there, ahead, headlights. Another car. They swerved. Too late. The truck clipped the other vehicle, flipped, spun into the ditch. Crash. Everything went black. Silence, then ringing. Eric woke upside down, bleeding, something sharp in his arm. Mark was hanging limp beside him. He crawled out the shattered window, dragging his body into the dirt. No sign of the other car, no sign of the creature, just trees. And then, footsteps, crunching leaves. From the trees a figure emerged, not tall, not twisted, a woman, mid-30s, hiking jacket, holding a flare. She approached slowly. You boys okay? Eric blinked. Who? She knelt beside him. I'm a guide. I found the other car down the road, heard the crash, been calling for you, thought you were. She paused, looked at him closely, then whispered. Did you say its name? Eric's eyes widened. The woman smiled. It's okay, we all do. Her mouth split at the corners, too wide. Her voice changed, all the voices at once. Welcome home. Eric screamed and tried to crawl away, but his arms gave out. His body felt too heavy, like something inside him had started unraveling. The woman, or whatever she was, rose slowly to her feet. Her limbs creaked, joints bending in wrong directions. Her skin shifted, sagging, tightening, reshaping itself like warm wax in the firelight of her flare. And her smile, it never faded. You shouldn't have spoken the name, she said, voice low, layered. But that's how it starts. You say it, then it hears you, then it shows you. everything you've ever feared. Eric coughed up blood, whispering, "Mark." The woman tilted her head. "Mark? Oh, sweetheart." She took a step closer. "You've been alone since the second night." Eric blinked. His memory flickered. Campfire, Mark's voice, the radio tower, the shack. Had Mark been there? Had he ever made it out of the forest? A moment returned. The shack. Eric screaming for help. The thing climbing on the roof. Mark had shouted something. Or had he? "No," Eric croaked. The woman crouched beside him, her hands grazing the bloody dirt. Fingers too long, nails peeling upward like bark. Her eyes were wrong, reflecting not light, but faces. Familiar ones. His mother, his sister, Jason, himself, Eric. She whispered in 1,000 voices at once. "You never left the woods." He blacked out. When he awoke, he was standing, not by choice. His body moved on its own, like a puppet pulled by strings lodged deep inside his spine. The trees stood still. The sky had gone grey, and there was no sun, no direction. Just an infinite wall of forest in every direction. Ahead of him stood Mark, clean, unharmed, holding a map. "You okay, man?" Mark asked cheerfully. "Found the trail, just ahead." Eric blinked. His hands were clean, no wounds, no blood. Jason stepped out of the brush with a grin. "Told you this trip would be worth it." They were back, before the first night, before Jason disappeared. Eric tried to speak, to scream, but his mouth only smiled. He felt himself nodding. "Yeah," he said in his own voice. "Let's go set up camp." Snap. High above in the canopy, something moved. It whispered, "Welcome back." That night, around the fire, Eric sat between his friends. They laughed, told stories, roasted hot dogs, just like the first time. Except the fire gave off no heat. The food had no taste, and the laughter echoed too long, too hollow, too empty. In the distance, beyond the circle of firelight, a second Eric stood between the trees, watching. His body was covered in ash, his mouth sewn shut, eyes wide with terror. He screamed, but no sound came out, and the forest swallowed him whole. Mark didn't know how long he had been walking. The forest had grown stranger. The branches bent unnaturally, gnarled like fingers reaching toward him. The air felt wrong, too still, too heavy, as though the forest itself was waiting for something. He hadn't seen Eric in hours. After the two of them had tried to escape the clearing, and Jason's horrifying transformation, they'd gotten separated. Mark had turned to check if Eric was behind him, and when he looked forward again, the trail was gone. Just trees, endless, choking trees. He heard twigs snapping behind him now and then. Heard his name spoken in whispers that faded before he could fully hear them. But nothing ever came into view. He found himself in front of an old wooden bridge. Something out of place in this remote part of the forest. It stretched across a dry ravine, ancient, sagging under its own weight. On the other side, a cabin. At first glance, it looked like a hunter's shelter, half rotted and overgrown with vines. He crossed. The bridge creaked with each step. Below, rocks and dry weeds waited to catch a fall. Mark didn't look down. He kept his eyes on the cabin. He knocked on the door. Nothing. He pushed it open. Inside, the room was dusty, filled with relics of someone who had once lived off the grid. Tools, old newspaper clippings, a pot-bellied stove, a pile of firewood, a cot, and pinned to the walls, sketches, drawings of a creature, half man, half goat. Its face was featureless, just black, but its eyes were always watching. He turned slowly. A journal sat open on the desk. He read. It mimics the voice first, then the face. If you hear your own voice, it's already seen you. Mark stepped back, and that's when he heard it. Outside the cabin, a knock, then a voice. "Mark, it's me, it's Eric. Open up." Mark backed farther into the room. "I found the path. We can leave, but you have to let me in." Mark's heart thudded. Eric's voice again, but somehow, not right. "Please, it's cold out here." Mark crept toward the boarded window and peeked through a slit. What stood outside looked like Eric. Same jacket, same boots, but his arms hung too long, his neck tilted at a broken angle, and it was smiling, too wide, and its mouth never moved when it spoke. "Let me in, Mark. You're tired. Come with me." Mark grabbed a rusted hunting knife from the desk. He didn't say a word. He waited. After a minute of silence, he checked the window again. The thing that looked like Eric was gone. Mark didn't remember falling asleep. One moment, he was staring at the window, heart pounding in his throat. And the next, he was jolting awake, soaked in sweat, the fire reduced to glowing embers. His watch was gone. The ranger station looked untouched, like no one had ever been inside. But the door was open, not wide, just cracked, a sliver, like someone had opened it halfway through the night, then changed their mind. Mark stood slowly. Every bone in his body ached. He didn't speak. He didn't even breathe loudly. The forest outside was too still, the kind of silence that hums in your ears. He stepped out carefully, gripping the axe with both hands. His boots crunched on gravel. There was no trail anymore, no sign of the path he'd followed the night before. The station had disappeared behind him like a memory, and where it had stood, only thick woods and fog. Mark turned in place. The trees were closer than they had been. They leaned in slightly, like they were listening. Then, a sound, footsteps, rhythmic, measured, not running, not charging, just walking. He ducked behind a tree, peeking toward the direction of the sound. A man was coming up the hill, tall, wearing old dirty jeans and a flannel shirt, limping, holding something. It was a lantern, but the flame didn't flicker. It glowed too evenly, too steadily. The man's face was hidden under a dark hood, but when he got closer, Mark saw his own face, identical, the same scar on the eyebrow, same stubble, same tired eyes. Mark froze. The figure walked right past him, 10 feet away, and didn't flinch. It didn't sniff the air, didn't look around, but it spoke. Mark's own voice. "I knew you'd watch me. I would." Mark stumbled backward, tripping over a root. The figure didn't react. It walked into the woods, lantern swaying side to side, humming a low tune, the same song Mark's mother used to hum when she put him to bed. He waited, let it vanish into the trees. Then he ran in the opposite direction, lungs burning. After what felt like hours, Mark stumbled upon a dirt service road. There were no signs, no tracks, just open path under a grey sky. He followed it, for miles, no birds, no animals, not even wind, until something shimmered in the distance, a parked truck, old, rusty, but real. He sprinted toward it, slamming on the driver's window. No one inside. Keys in the ignition, door unlocked. He jumped in, twisted the key. It started. Tears filled his eyes. He slammed the truck into gear and drove. Didn't think, didn't stop. Dirt gave way to gravel, then pavement, then a gas station. He pulled over, screaming for help, stumbling out of the truck like a madman. The clerk called the police. Later, at the hospital, they sedated him. He tried explaining what happened. They said his friends were still missing. They found only scraps of a campsite, no gear, no bodies, no blood. just the burnt remains of a journal near a tree, pages unreadable, except one, scorched but legible. It said, "Goatman wears your memories. He speaks in your voice. He only needs you to let him in." Mark never went back into the woods. He never heard from Jason or Eric again. But sometimes, at night, especially when it rains, he hears footsteps outside his house, slow, measured, a knock on the back door, and a voice that sounds just like him saying, "Mark, let me in. You left me there." Mark moved across the country a year later. New town, new name, new job. Anything to outrun what happened in those woods. He told people his friends died in a hiking accident. A bear attack, maybe. Something clean and explainable. No one ever found Jason or Eric. No remains, no bodies. Just one blood-stained hiking boot lodged in a tree nearly 20 feet up, found weeks after the search had ended. Mark kept quiet. He tried to move on. But the Goatman doesn't let you. It waits. It learns. It copies. It wears you. A few months after he settled into his new life, Mark began receiving strange phone calls. No caller ID. When he picked up, no one spoke. Just breathing. Slow. Familiar. Sometimes the calls came at 2 a.m. Sometimes while he was at work. Always the same. Until one night he answered and heard, "You left me, Mark. I'm still cold." He threw the phone across the room. Changed his number. Didn't matter. The next night, it rang again. And this time it said, "You can change the name, not the face." One day Mark came home from work and found his apartment door slightly open. Nothing was stolen, nothing broken, just moved. A picture frame turned backward on the shelf. His toothbrush upside down in the holder. The chair at his kitchen table pulled out. And on his pillow, a pine cone, fresh, sticky with sap, exactly like the ones near their old campsite. He went to the police. They laughed him off. No sign of break-in, no fingerprints. Mark insisted. He told them about the Goatman, the voices, the thing that mimics. They wrote it down as paranoid delusion. He stopped going after that. Mark started sleeping in the living room with the lights on. He boarded up the bedroom window. He didn't use mirrors anymore. Too many times he swore he saw someone standing behind him. Someone that looked exactly like him. One night, while dozing off on the couch, he heard the back door creak open. He sat up, axe already in his hands. Yes, he kept one now. But no one was there, except a trail of muddy footprints, bare feet, leading into the hallway. He followed them slowly, heart in his throat. They ended at the bedroom door, closed, locked. He hadn't used that room in weeks. Mark raised the axe and kicked the door open. Empty, but scrawled into the wall, carved deep with something sharp. "You left me, now I wear you." That was the last time anyone heard from Mark. The next morning, his neighbors called the police after hearing screaming around 3:47 a.m. The apartment was found in shambles, the lights all smashed, the windows broken from the inside. No sign of forced entry, no mark, no blood. But the axe was still in the living room, clean, placed neatly on the table. And in the bathroom mirror, written in fog though the glass was dry, 4 words, "Don't answer the voice." 2 months later, a man showed up in a small town 1 state over. Same height, same building, same stubble as Mark. He introduced himself as Eric. He said he'd just moved from Kentucky. He worked nights, kept to himself. But every now and then, when he walked past someone's window late at night, a child would wake up crying, a dog would growl at the empty road, and an old woman down the street swore she saw something wearing Mark's face. but with eyes that were wrong, too wide, too still, too empty. Because once the Goatman knows your voice, it knows how to find a new skin, and it never stops looking for the next one. Thank you for staying with us through tonight's chilling tale. If you're still listening, it means the shadows didn't scare you away. But remember, what we share here isn't just fiction for some. Sometimes, the scariest stories are the ones rooted in truth. The ones whispered in late-night conversations. The ones no one dares to say out loud. Here on our channel, we bring you terrifying atmospheric horror stories every single night. Whether it's haunted encounters, cursed rituals, creatures of the dark, or true unexplained mysteries, you'll find it all here, told with care, crafted to unsettle. So if you enjoy horror that lingers even after the story ends, consider subscribing and turning on the bell icon, not just to support the channel, but to never miss the next nightmare. And if tonight's story left you with chills, let us know in the comments. Your feedback helps us keep digging deeper into the darkness. This is your nightly dose of horror, and we'll be back tomorrow. Same time, same fear. Until then, sleep well, if you can.